Ready to roll here. Latecomers have to pay full admission. All right, welcome to, this is the beginning of Wings 2015-2016. We go over the academic year here. Wings of Knowledge is a program every month, sometimes two. Sometimes we have a gap of a whole 6 weeks, but this is our first for the fall. And we have a mixed bag of programs coming up. We have Randy Pierce coming up, provided he made it through Mount Kilimanjaro, and we have, okay, good. He's the guy who's flying dogs, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. We have him coming up in December, and I'm glad he's with us. And we're actually going to the dogs next time. We're going to be Becoming Wolf with Chris Chandler on the November 3rd. But tonight we have a special program. My name's Stu Wallace. I teach history here. This is history, sort of, as far as the Mayans are concerned. And this is a special program because, well, first of all, the Mayans are kind of interesting. We didn't know much about them at all until we started finding these ruins. But this is something that is we have to look up for this one. This deals with the Mayan sky and what they thought about all that stuff up there and why it's working the way it did. And our special guest tonight is R.P. Hale. Now, R.P. Hale, and I'm sure you've actually run across people with this exact label before, is an archaeoastronomer, historian, musician, calligrapher, chemist, teacher, and musical instrument maker. If you can guess what musical instruments he makes, you get special credit for tonight.
You cheated.
R.P. has done many wonderful things. In fact, there's some calligraphy of his in my own office when I left as director of the planetarium many years ago, and I treasure it. And it's special to have him here because I have no idea where he's going to go with this, none whatsoever. He is probably, for all I know, going to predict another end of the world, or at least poo-poo anybody who does. Remember that, was it like 2 or 3 years ago, there was this guy who sold a book and he predicted the end of the world, probably number 7,497 in world Western history civilization, to predict the end of the world. And I had a distant cousin who was a real sucker for that stuff, so she bought this guy's book. That's the first part of being a sucker. And she gave it to me, telling me it was the world coming to an end. And so I held on to the book until the day after. The world did not come to an end. I thought I'd leave that suspense. And I never did tell the library staff here, but I placed that book in the book drop discount, whatever. Gave it to the library. I have no idea. You probably threw it out. R.P. Hale is going to talk to us about the Mayan sky and calendar. And as I said, I have no idea what R.P. is going to do, so I'm going to turn it over to him. R.P., you're on.
Thank you.
An attendance sheet. If you're here, would you please be so kind as to sign it? We always like to have an idea who's here. Don't worry, you're not going to be, so NSA will not be after you for this, but we always like to know who comes here. So just let us know who you are and whether you're a student, faculty, visitor, whatever. You're on.
Well, I wish you told me, because I don't know where I'm going with this.
Right.
So as far as the end of the world is, I'll give you the astronomer's answer. So what you want to do is set your alarms for 6 billion years hence.
Exactly?
Or plus or minus a couple 100 million years. We're not quite sure. I mean, every calculation on the volume of hydrogen versus helium conversion within the sun, this is one of my, I teach astronomy at St. Paul's, and that's one of my project problems. Every student has given me a different answer every single year, but it lies within the range of 6 billion years from now, plus or minus 122 million years or so. So set your alarm for a general. Wake me up while you're at it. We'll get a bloody good show of the sun entering red giant phase. Now that's end times. Trouble is, these wackos, they don't want to wait that long for some reason. I'm perfectly willing to wait that long. I don't know about you. So actually what I'm going to do is we're going to explore some of the math. Now, before you cringe, I was very lucky in my math teachers. They taught me how to use it, even that blasted calculus stuff. You didn't hear me say that. So, but all those horrible classes and semesters, my academic background is in organic chemistry. I've got a bachelor's and master's in it. I am working on a doctorate right now in archaeoastronomy / Mesoamerican studies / Maya, and because I don't have enough to do. And all those horrible math sessions came back and bit me because now I'm really getting smacked in it because I had to go, of all things, and work on the bloody calendars. So, I mean, I couldn't do straight archaeology or anything like that. No, I mean, let's go into some self-abuse here. So, I'm going to start out first with the date December 22nd, 2012, the day after. I had fought the New Age for 22 years over that one. And a fellow from the Boston Globe calls me on the 22nd of December, and because I'd been feeding them articles and stirring up all sorts of trouble with the Harvard Smithsonian Observatory and so on, positive trouble. And the interview went, this, that, and the other. And they finally, "Are you sorry this is over?" I said, "No." "Well, maybe I am." "Oh, what are you regretful? What are you regretting about it?" He said, "Well, I found out I am on most of the New Age enemies lists." "Oh, that's too bad. I'm sorry to hear that." I said, "Yeah, so am I. I didn't reach my goal. I wanted to be on all of them." So, oh well. And basically the whole thing came down to, this is what happens when you pick a fight with an Aztec and lose. So don't worry, I don't have an obsidian knife here, so you're all safe. And we've given up most of our nasty habits quite a long time ago. But as I mentioned at school, I won't tell you which ones we kept. All right, so why don't we, okay, that is, okay. Oh, hit the one on the right. Okay. So we know of about 870 cultures in Mesoamerican history and counting. There are some 586 of them still existing in Mexico, Central America. But everybody knows the Maya and the Aztec. What a lot of people don't realize is that the Maya were divided into 32 separate groups, each one somewhat able to talk, we're talking about 30 different languages, 32 different languages. And in other words, a Caquichel Maya from Guatemala could not converse with a Yucatec Maya from the Yucatan. And on top of that, they're at their peak, there must have been, we figure there were about 35 million of them, all divided, and all warring with each other. I mean, the Maya made my Aztec ancestors look like kindergartners when it came to blood, guts, death, misery, and all that good stuff. And, they played balls with people's heads. Ball games were literally elimination rounds. That's what happened to the loser, sacrificed, and other very pleasant thing. But they were in constant war with each other. And however, while warring, they were developing all these cultural attributes as well. And one thing they did is they beat out everybody with time scales. And the longest single discrete time scale we know of in Maya archaeoastronomy is a time period of over 72 octillion years. That's 72 followed by 30 zeros. And all right, so I'm 18th century. This is a devil's instrument. All right, there we go. And they did not disappear. There's still 16 million of them. Speaking 30 languages, we lost 2 on the way. And however, Mesoamericans, not the Maya, but Mesoamericans, the Olmec, Epi-Olmec, and Zapotec were the first to devise and use the number 0. And in all the Maya languages, in fact, 0 is a verb that can be conjugated. That's really getting metaphysical now. Okay, so the other thing is we are in the Second Renaissance, and what that means is that every single one of us who are involved in these studies had to trash almost every damn thing we learned before because it was all wrong. And that's what happens when you go from knowing 12% of the glyphs and in a 15-year period knowing almost all of them. We're still deciphering some that we don't know about, and glyphs do vary somewhat. But the interesting thing about it, it's like Chinese. The glyphs, no matter what group you were in, the glyphs were common. They may have slightly different pronunciations, slightly different meanings, slightly different language inflections, but they were in common. And in fact, I myself right now, everybody in Maya studies now learns Chol Maya. That's the language, that's the original language of the glyphs. It's hell. And I thought we were going to have an easy ride because of my knowledge of the Aztec language, but no, this is different. And then, because I'm working with the southern Maya, the Palenque, Tikal, Kaminahuyu regions, I am learning Cholti, which is the modern version of Chol. So I don't sound like a bloody fool when I'm down there with the locals. Or I only sound like half a bloody fool when I'm down there instead of a total one. And the one thing I have learned to ask in about 8 of the Maya languages is the polite way of, do you speak Spanish? So never ask about English. Okay, where were they? Well, by the way, the Zapotec are still with us. They speak one of the oldest languages in the Western Hemisphere. They've been there for over 6,000 years. They also account for 1/3 of Mexico's presidents since 1820. And, well, Benito Juarez is the most famous one. Emiliano Zapata was another. He wasn't a president, but he was very famous. The Olmec were centered in far south Mexico into Guatemala. Guatemala seceded from Mexico right after Mexico seceded from Spain, and they're still arguing over that one. The Maya pretty much dominated the Yucatan all the way into the central Petén region, all the way down to nearly Panama. And there was an enclave of them centered around the city of Teotihuacan. We don't know what kind of Maya because we don't know who they were, and we have to use the Aztec name because we don't know what the name of that city was either. One thing we're not finding at Teotihuacan are glyphs, which is very, very interesting. So, boy, I wish they'd thought about that before they burned the place down. Okay, and some of the cities, my region of operation is in here, between Palenque and Tikal, centered around Palenque. And this is where the flatlands meet the high mountains. So it's not, I mean, it can be pretty miserable in the summer, and that's when I would prefer to go because I don't have to worry about tourists. You just have to worry about mosquitoes, poisonous snakes, and things like that. But don't go there in winter, or you can't get through the crowds. The northern regions, of course, the very famous Chichen Itza, Uxmal, Coba, and then the central, the Calakmul, Tikal, La Venta, Palenque region, and then to the south we get down into Kaminahuyu and Quirihua and Izapa, which is one of the oldest sites. The Izapa is not a Maya site, it is an Epi-Olmec site. And, but the Maya took it over when they started dominating. And toward the end, just before, now by the way, I did not grow up in South Tucson learning about the Spanish conquest. I learned about la invasión, the invasion. And so just prior to the invasion, I told you we had long memories, just prior to the invasion, the orange is the extent of the Aztec Empire. Insem Anahual Mexica. They were really called the Mexica, and that's where the word Mexico comes from. And the green area is pretty much where the Maya had pretty much confined themselves, and you may notice also from the map that there is no contact. The Maya and the Aztec only met through intermittent merchant trips. And the Maya knew full well that the Aztecs conquered by merchants. They would send merchants into new towns, and if the merchants didn't come back, then they sent an army. And however, we're getting into really nasty, thick jungle here, and plus the Maya were as fierce as they ever had been, and they would receive the Aztec, the intermittent Aztec merchant or pair of merchants, and then treat them nicely, and then escort them to their respective borders and politely and firmly tell them, Chinguan Anampa, don't come back. And they didn't. So, plus, this region here, which is almost centered around, well, I mean Palenque, this gray area here, that was also called Semnanahuali, the sick zone. People who went in there tended to get cholera and all sorts of nasty things. So this was actually a buffer zone between the Aztecs and the by then 30 Maya groups. This area was conquered entirely by foot. There were no horses, no draft animals, no wagons, no wheels. And the capital, Tenochtitlan. Okay. All right. Now the math. They use 3 characters in their mathematics. All the Mesoamerican cultures used but 3 characters. They had a dot and a bar and a 0. Now, by the time the Aztecs dominated from the 12th century on, they had lost the 0. But they were still using dot and bar. But a dot is 1 unit and a bar is 5. And we think it was either hand signals or sticks and stones. And by the way, they didn't count by 10, they counted by 20. We have 10 integers in our Arabic system from 0 to 9. And then, however, they have 20 integers from 0 to 19. And all their math is multiplied, added, all calculations are by 20, not by 10. And so here are the basic 20 integers. Bishbao in the Yucatec language means in process of. It is going from somewhere to somewhere. In this case, it is going from nothing to something. And by the way, there were no fractions. In other words, the best way to describe the Mesoamerican concept of 0 is simply to ask, we've all driven to Boston, right? Have you arrived in Boston before you got there? That's a nasty question, isn't it? In other words, if it's 70 miles to Boston, if you covered 60, are you there yet? No. Which is also, by the way, why the year 2000 was not the millennium. It was the last year of the previous one, because 99 cents does not make a dollar. So and these are the, most of us still pretty much use the Yucatec names for the numbers, although I was told recently I had to learn how to count in Chol. But, oh well. We'll see what that does. All right, so now we're pretty sure that it was all addition and subtraction. Multiplication was implied, division never. There were no fractions. In other words, you either had a whole ear of corn or you didn't. If you broke that ear of corn, you had two smaller pieces. That was as close as they could get to the concept of a fraction. And to this day, no Maya language has a word that means half, quarter, fifth, eighth, third. They multiply by adding. So what's that number, by the way?
3.
3 plus
5
equals?
8.
See, 5 plus 3, right? And what's that last integer on the second one? 17. Okay, and now we've got, we have 11 minus what equals what?
4, 7.
Okay. All right, now, that's all very well and good if you're from 0 to 19, but what have we got now? 18 plus 2. Notice that there's no integer for 20, right? In other words, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, we add a place to the left, don't we, to make 10, right? They do the same thing, except they go up. That's what they do. So instead of times 10, so 20 is simply a single dot over the 0 symbol. So this is 1 times 20 plus 0 times 1 equals 20. And yes, when you deal with these kind of numbers, you have to think that way. And by the way, that is not foreign thinking. I'll bet none of you knew that we do this all the time with our Arabic numerals. So, so 22 is 1 times 20 plus 2 times 1, right? Yep. And 40 is 2 times 20 plus 0. 100 is 5 times 20 plus 0. See how it works? Now, do you think it's going to stop there?
No.
No way. it goes. There is no end to this system. We do not know if they knew about negative numbers. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, but we have no evidence. But once you start, if the starting place is given to be B-spal or 0, is there an end to the system? There is not. And three-place numbers. So the lowest three-place number is 400, so we now have 20 times 20. Instead of, in other words, 1, 10, 10 times 10, 10 to the third. Same thing. So we have 400 times 1 plus 0 plus 0. And you see how the pattern develops. Here we have 400 plus 100, 5 times 20 plus 0. The largest three-place integer is 19, 19, 19, and as you can see how it builds up. So what do you think 8,000 will be? How about a dot over a 0 over a 0 over a 0? Right. Yeah. And people think I'm patronizing them with this until with my classes I start, okay, now we're going to look at some slides that I took in Palenque and you're going to date them for me. And then you're going to convert them. I won't do that to you. I didn't have the hand. However, don't go looking for quadratic equations in base 20. Although I have been known to punish recalcitrance at St. Paul's by, okay, boy, tomorrow, and I want it in dot and bar. So don't mess with me if you know what's good for you. So, all right. Now, instead of doing dot and bar, I mean, I do have an app on my computer that allows me to work in dot and bar, but it is so much easier